California has a reputation for being the most progressive state in the Union. This is borne out by a range of state laws and policies that have been enacted over the past 20 years. How did California go from a state known for its racist and exclusionary politics that gave birth to Reaganism to a state renowned for its progressive politics?
No fear! Everybody knows you will never be defeated! Don't get it! Shut it down!
The 1990s were a time of a lot of innovation and real movement, and yet it was at a time of unprecedented attacks.
We intend to do what is necessary to end the drug menace.
They keep coming. 2 million illegal immigrants in California.
The opponents of Proposition 187 have been very active in recent days.
There was a slew of initiatives in the 90s that was relentless. There was Proposition 187, attacking undocumented children.
Pete Wilson, a 187 supporter, is pinning his re-election hopes on anti-immigrant sentiment.
Proposition 209, anti-affirmative action. Proposition 227, the anti-bilingual education initiative. 21, 3 strikes to increase juvenile penalties.
3 strikes and you are out.
184, death penalty. The list went on and on.
The Republican Party decided it could really mobilize white voters by making them afraid of people of color. So they spoke in code, they talked about law and order, forced busing. So by the time Reagan got into office, there was a great polarization between many white people and people of color.
All of a sudden, police brutality had a human face.
There have been riots downtown. They went through, looted the Justice Building, City Hall.
Los Angeles in the early 90s was a city that almost saw its breaking point. We had one of the largest civil unrests in the history of the United States in 1992. We had the O.J. Simpson trial, one of the most highly racialized media events in the history of the country. We had one of the biggest earthquakes. We had record-breaking wildfires. So literally, the city was coming apart at the seams.
Police abuse was rampant. It was the beginnings of the crack cocaine epidemic. It was so clear that we were going to enter a period of mass incarceration.
Don't take my mother, please!
You had the war on drugs, you had all of these attacks. It was about getting in the streets, shutting down traffic, and things are not going to be right for this city until they're right for the most vulnerable workers.
In the wake of the passages and the implementation of some of the most regressive social and economic policies in the country, new social movements, organizations, and networks were forged in the 1990s and 2000s that challenged the status quo.
In 1992, you have the establishment of a number of really important organizations who then start working together to move the ball forward in terms of making things better for communities of color.
The Community Coalition started. It made absolute sense for the organization to be built as a black-brown organization. African Americans, Latinos, Asians, progressive whites, we saw our movement that way.
What it took in California was a community of immigrants to come forward and say, no, that's not going to work for us. What's going to work for us is for us to be bold and to participate. And that's why we've seen the leadership of immigrants across the state rise.
One of the key pivot moments from us being under attack was we had the South LA Via Ragosa for Mayor program, and we had 300 Black precinct walkers out knocking on doors, talking to other Black voters about why we need to elect the Mexican. And we were really able to explain very clearly off of that campaign, here's why you need to unite South LA African American voters with East LA Latinos in order to win citywide. And in 2005, we won.
Labor created an organization called the Organization of Los Angeles Workers. We focused on citizenship and most of all voter participation in election time. In 1994, when 187 was passed by Wilson, there were 6 Latinos in the California legislature. 10 years later, there were 27. And that's a measure of the success of all the organized activities by labor and the Latino community to expand voter participation.
The social movements in California have made major gains over the past 20 years. Pro-immigration laws, criminal justice reform, marriage equality, tax reforms, and others. But California is still the land of unequal opportunity. Income and wealth inequality is rampant. Housing costs are out of control. The public education system is failing our youth, especially youth of color. Unions are under constant attack, and many other social ills go unresolved. The lessons of the past 20 years can be applied today as activists and community members respond to the issues that still plague their communities and develop innovative solutions.
We need to build a level of power that is undeniable, that will change the way people think about our communities. We'll get people to actually be willing to be brave and go for the solutions that really might end the suffering that's happening in our communities. But ultimately, those solutions aren't going to come until our people are the ones making the decisions.
I come from people who survived slavery. I come from an activist community that survived the internment camps, that survived the Holocaust, and we will survive this. We as progressives need to be very strategic. We need to take care of ourselves. We can't just be living and breathing the resistance because it'll drive you crazy. We can't go through the age of Trump just feeling miserable every minute. We can defeat him. We will defeat him.
To build a narrative that embraces all people requires incredible depth of personal work, where strategies of organizing and healing and work around culture shift can actually come together in a way that creates real relationship, and with a narrative that gets us to move from scarcity to abundance, that moves from despair and grief to one of creative possibility.